are now at module 8. We've looked at how to develop a theory of change. We've looked at the different kinds of evaluation design. We've then delved into the kind of evaluation questions that we should ask, moving into indicator development, and looking at the kind of data that we need to collect. I think now what is very, very important is to understand the kind of sampling we should undertake, or identify the people that would give us the best sort of information on the indicators and the data that we are trying to collect. So without much further ado, I think just to set the tone for sampling, it is basically a set of observations. I mean, we recognize that if we're working with 10,000 children, we might not be able to speak to each one of them, but we are going to try and select students of these 10,000 students that we're reaching to estimate program impact. And for estimating program impact, the two things that we need to do through sampling is, one, to ensure that we have a mix of all kinds of or recognize the heterogeneity in among students, and try and have a good representative sample. When I say that, I mean when you're looking at students, you're looking at gender, you're looking at a mix of students from schools which are remotely located, a mix of students in schools who have a high student-teacher ratio. So a lot of variables, but we're going to try and ensure that the students we select represent the overall population. And the next, also, we want to ensure we have a sufficient size to make estimates and inferences of impact. So how do we do that? I urge all of you to look at the Fresh Spectrum website and some of the comic illustrations that are done through this, all about evaluation. But if you look at this, a lot of times discussions say, okay, just take 10% of the sample, right? But I don't think that does justice to ensure the representativeness or or a sufficient size. You need everything will or every sample has to be chosen very, very, in depth, with some rationale and justification for why. So I think most of you would be aware that we have two types of sampling. One is probability sampling and one is non-probability sampling. When we say probability sampling, we understand this as if there are 1,000 students in a particular school, every single one of those students can be picked. So we can say with certainty that each of them has a probability of being picked. Whereas in non-probability sampling, we say that students will be picked based on certain criteria or characteristics or context or situations, and not all of them have the same probability of being selected. So usually sampling is the types of sampling is chosen based on the context, on the scope, and the research objectives. Let's begin with just understanding the different types of probability sampling. So the first one, and most of us are aware of this, is simple random sampling, where out of these 1,000 students, anyone can, we need to pick 100. Let's go with that, that our sample size is 100 students. So we can just randomly, without any context, pick 100 of the 1,000. The next is a systematic sampling, wherein if we have an Excel sheet with all 1,000 students' names and details, we pick every third student or every second student or every 10th student in this case. So if every 10th student on our Excel sheet is picked at regular intervals. Again, very random. When we look at stratified sampling, what we do is we take these 1,000 students and we group them in smaller groups. So we take the 1,000 students, 600 of them are female and 400 are male. So that's one group. Within that, we can have we ensure that we are picking 60% of girls and 40% of boys. or basically we're stratifying them and picking from each group. Another group could be students who get good test scores, students who get mediocre test scores, and students who get low test scores. So we could pick from each of these groups. So what happens in stratification is that you're ensuring that your sampling is representative. If you look at cluster, you can you can look at it in terms of a geographic cluster. So you're saying that, okay, there were 3 states that the program was implemented in. We are ensuring that we are picking the 100 students from different clusters or different sections. And the last one, and we're going to look into this a little more, but like what I had mentioned, in terms of proportion to percentage. So if we see that 600 students are girls and 400 are boys, then we will try and ensure that that proportion, or rather the percentage we take or the proportion we take, is representative of the overall sample demographic. So just to reiterate, probability sampling will help us to ensure that our sample is representative and covers all the different kinds of stakeholders or respondents that are part of our larger sample universe. Now looking at non-probability sampling. Now in non-probability sampling, the first one is purposive sampling, wherein if the research objective is to reach female entrepreneurs in the northeast of India, or if the research objective is to have girls who, or to include teachers who have computers at home also. So you're selecting a sample based on the purpose. Let's take our example. There are 1,000 students, and our purpose is to really understand the impact on girls. So we will kind of look at this. We will just look at girls, and we're only going to select girls in our sample. So it's not probable that boys will be selected. The other is convenience sampling. Now, this again, applying this to our example, it might be that we've created a very good stratification, and we've said we want to take 60 girls and 40 boys, and at the end of it, within these 60 girls, we need to have different layers of test scores, or girls who are getting these different test scores. But when we go into schools, what we find are a large number of boys, and we are not able to really stick to our sample. Why? Because we don't have the respondents present at that point in time. So respondents are difficult to trace or reach, and so we take whoever we get to understand impact of the program. The other one is snowball sampling. Now again, if we look at right now, all the schools are closed. So if we want to go into a study, we reach the school and then we say, all right, can you give us a couple of student numbers? We speak to those students, and then those students connect us to more students. So only, it's basically through reference, and snowball sampling is one. Respondent introduces you to the other respondent. Again, makes it non-probable for everyone to be selected because there is some bias in selection. Quota sampling, again, it is quite similar to cluster or purposive, but I think what we need to do here, or rather what we need to think about here, is that we have some preset standards that we will only select girls who have attended the program for more than one academic year, or there's some preset standard for selecting our respondents. Finally, there could also be voluntary response sample, where we've put out a survey, and everyone who wants to respond and give feedback on the program or on the impacts of the program voluntarily choose to participate. So this is just kind of giving you an overview of the kinds of sampling, but you will have to kind of understand these different methods, because based on your context, scope, and research objectives, you would need to use some of these methods to identify your sample size and your sample and your respondent profiles. I'd also like to kind of introduce you to this whole idea of, sampling is not simplistic. And we most times, to have a very rigorous sampling methodology, we use multi-state sampling. How does that work? So we would first, in our example, we would first look at the three states, and we would undertake some sort of a, look at them in clusters.